This is lesson 3 of our Earning Power unit. This lesson is titled Pay and Taxes. So I think you understand now that when you receive a paycheck, portion of what you made goes back to the government. Those are called taxes. There are also some other deductions that are made from your paycheck. If you have things like insurance, oftentimes the company that you're working for will take that out before your taxes. And that's actually a good thing. It means that you're not losing money and then having to pay more money. But we're going to be talking about the different types of deductions that might come out of your paycheck and how that could affect your living. So today we're going to investigate what impacts your paycheck and your personal taxes. So if your job pays $8 an hour and you work 20 hours, your paycheck should be about $160, right? Because if you take $8, you multiply that by 20 hours, you will get $160. But the reality is that what you earn, it's not the same as what you actually receive to spend as you wish. After taxes and other items are deducted from your paycheck, you're going to have less money in hand to save or spend or invest. So after we investigate what happens to your paycheck, my goal is for you to be able to calculate net pay. We're going to talk about the difference between gross and net pay. You'll be able to list factors that impact personal income tax liability, and you'll be able to list factors that impact net pay. And then once you understand what all of these terms are and how different factors can impact what you earn and what you can spend later on, we're going to use what you've learned to maximize your pay options to make sure that you are getting the most out of your paycheck. So let's take a look at Kevin. Let's look at Kevin's paycheck. If Kevin earns $6.50 an hour, he worked 60 hours last month. How much did he earn for the entire month? So let's look at his regular pay. His regular pay would be $6.50 times that 60 hours that he worked. Now that would be roughly $390. If you take $6.50 and multiply it by 60, you should get $390. So Kevin may have made $390 in regular pay, but there are some other things that may have increased his paycheck. Depends on if he gets tips or not. So if you've ever been to a restaurant and the waitress did a really good job or the waiter did a really good job, you often give them a tip, a percentage of whatever the total of your check was. So Kevin may have earned some tips. And when we take everything that he's earned, we discussed, we call that gross pay. It is all the money that he earned added together. So you can see we have our regular pay, we're going to add our tips, and that's going to equal our gross pay. Well, Kevin also had some things that he had to deduct. He had to take out payroll taxes. If we take something out, that means that we're going to use subtraction. So we had to deduct some payroll taxes, and there were some other deductions that he had to take out as well. When we take out deductions, that's an operation of subtraction. And our gross pay, if we subtract all of our deductions from that, that gets us our net pay, our take-home pay. What Kevin's able to spend is called his net pay. Well, this story here really doesn't have a lot of other information. We don't know if Kevin made any tips. We don't know if he had any other deductions. But I do have an activity that's going to give us some more hints about Kevin and his paycheck. So turn into your student notebooks to activity 3.8. 3.8, it says check it out. It looks very similar to this. And it gives us a lot of the same information. It says we're going to use the information provided to calculate Kevin's net pay. Remember that net pay, we said, is his take-home pay. So he earned $6.50 an hour and worked 60 hours last month. So that is his regular pay. He regularly makes $6.50 an hour. And for 60 hours, we said that if we multiply that together, it should be $390. During the month, he received $148 in tips. So if you see here, we have a line for tips. That is extra money that he's making on top of his regular pay. It's $148. He also used his employee food discount and chose to have the cost of meals deducted from his paycheck. So he works at a restaurant and he can choose to eat there as well, and just they take away the amount that he ate there. They just take that right off of his paycheck. So if Kevin had $21 deducted last month for meals, what is his net pay? So I can put 21 here for the other deductions that Kevin has had. And so now the goal is to figure out his gross pay and then his net pay. So before we can figure out gross pay, we actually have to figure out how much he made. So if you do $390 plus his tips, $148, you should get $538. $538 is what he made. That's his gross pay. But from that, the government takes some money, payroll taxes. They took $77, and there were other deductions. There was $21 for his meal. So I need to subtract that. I have to take 538 minus 77 minus 21. When you subtract that, you will get $440. So Kevin made $538, but almost $100 was taken out. And he only has $440 to spend for that month. That's quite a difference. That's a $100 difference between what he earned and what he actually brings home every month. So just to check, we had a regular pay of $390. We added tips of $148, and that got us our $538 of gross pay, what he earned. But with deductions and taxes, we subtracted $77 for taxes and $21 for deductions, and Kevin only took home $440. So we've got some questions. You might have had some questions right now just looking at that activity. Why don't you get all of your pay? And how do we get those payroll taxes calculated? And do you have any control over the amount of your net pay? We're going to answer these questions today, and you're going to realize that a lot of this can be figured out before you get your first paycheck and are surprised at the amount of money that you actually don't have left over. So if you noted, the very first thing that got taken away from Kevin's paycheck was taxes. What do you know about taxes? Do you know why we need them and what they're there for? Well, we're going to talk about that. There is a number of different types of taxes that are calculated for individuals. So income taxes for individuals, they're calculated as a percent of your taxable income. So what you make, your gross pay, is all taxable. That means that the government can take a portion of it. It's a percentage. It's usually a pretty small percent, but it adds up over time. So our taxable income is our gross pay minus any pre-tax deductions, and that gets a little dicey here and there. But those pre-tax deductions could be retirement plans, so if you're putting money away to retire, or any insurance, there are some insurance options that they'll take that money out first and it won't get taxed. And that's a good thing, that saves you money. So there's three different types of taxes. There's federal income tax, there's state income tax, and there are local income taxes as well. Federal income tax means the money that you make is going straight to the federal government. That is like the United States of America. If you have state taxes, that is what you're paying to your state, the state of Virginia, or the state of New York, or Maryland, or California. Those are states, and those would be some other taxes that you might have to pay to your state. There might also be some local income tax, so for the county or the city that you live in as well. That one is determined by the city itself. So for any of these taxes, to figure out how much you have to give, it's usually a percentage. So it might be that you give 7% of your income to the federal government, 3% to the state, and only 1% to your local area. To figure out how much you're actually spending or giving to your government, you would take your gross pay. So let's say you made $500 and you'd multiply it by whatever percent you have to pay. Remember that you have to change percentages into decimals. So 7% would be 0.07. And you could multiply to figure out how much you are giving to the federal income. To give you a little bit more insight on what happens with federal, state, and local income taxes, I want you to pause this video and read page 21 in your booklet. Go ahead right now, pause this and read page 21. Now that you've finished reading, we've seen what types of taxes there are. What are some reasons that you think we need taxes? Why do we need to even pay taxes? Why can't we just keep all of our money? Well, we give money to the government so that we can have government-funded projects and so that we can also pay government workers. We need our government to run, and the only way that our country has found that it works is that anybody who lives in the country pays a little bit to live here. Kind of makes sense. But your taxes pay government workers, but they also go into many other resources, like being able to provide and pay for our police officers and our firefighters. You like to have nice, smooth roads to ride on when you're going places, and your tax money also goes to the roads to make sure that we are keeping up with our roads and our systems. So there's lots of different areas that your tax money goes, and that's just to support our country as a whole. Okay, so we've looked at the type of taxes. There are also some other deductions called FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare, that you also get taken out. And we're going to look at what that looks like tomorrow. So for today, we're done. You've looked at the different types of federal and state and local income taxes. I'm going to encourage you to go online right now and research the percentage of an individual who has to pay federal, state, and local income tax. So what percentage of your paycheck goes to federal, what percentage goes to state, and what percentage goes to local income tax. Next time when we get back, we'll look at the difference between taxes and Social Security money.